We see Boeing 747s above us in the sky every day. But the most recognizable Boeing 747 and the most expensive one has to be Air Force One. It's a symbol of the presidency of the United States. It's been to every continent but Antarctica. The plane is gigantic and is easily recognizable from the US flag and presidential seal. But inside this plane are some secrets they'd rather you didn't know, from various decoy planes to missile, nuclear, and radar defense systems on board. Let's check out the biggest secrets of Air Force One. Missile defense. The US president is not welcomed in every country they go to or fly over. There's always the potential that someone could try and take the plane down. This could be a rogue militia group, or maybe even a fellow superpower. That's why Air Force One can expel flares from the aircraft's body. These are very bright and burn at very high temperatures, and they're enough to confuse any heat-seeking missile. The missile's heat-seeking warhead will then go for one of the flares instead of the plane, and it will hopefully explode in the air far away from Air Force One. Air Force One has missile launch warning systems on the front and back of the aircraft. It's able to track missiles using the ultraviolet exhaust signature the missiles put out. This is seriously high-tech and expensive stuff, and that's why many military planes, including fighter jets, don't even have this technology. Air Force One also has a high-energy laser. This can heat up the head of an incoming missile, thus detonating it before it even reaches the plane. Air Force One also has an AN/AAQ-24. This is also known as the Nemesis Directional Countermeasures System. This can fire flashes of infrared energy at incoming missiles. This will basically mess up any targeting the missile had. Air Force One is also said to have a belly-mounted anti-air missile system. This could destroy any incoming enemy aircraft. Decoy plane. If you've ever seen a presidential motorcade, you'll know that there's many versions of the beast. This is the car the president travels in. Well, in the air, things are no different, as they use decoys as well. Sometimes the vice president flies on the decoy plane. This means that the president and vice president can't both be taken out. The decoy plane will always land a few hundred miles away from Air Force One. This is in case anything bad is to happen to Air Force One. Nuclear defense. It's said that the greatest threat to world peace is nuclear weapons. Well, if you're aboard Air Force One, then you don't need to worry about that too much. That's because the presidential plane can stand up to a nuclear blast. It could not survive a direct hit because nothing can. But Air Force One is heavily shielded against the effects of nukes. This means the plane could keep flying if a nuke went off near it. And even more impressively, the communications and electronics would still work. This is so that in the event of a nuclear fallout, the president can command operations from the sky. Situation Room. Everyone is familiar with the Situation Room located inside the White House. It's the main mission control room, and it's where some of the biggest world-changing decisions are made. But there's not just one Situation Room located in the West Wing. There's also one aboard Air Force One. The Strategy Center includes a large desk and a screen too. This is so that people on the ground can video call to the plane. If anything critical happened while they were traveling, then the president and his top advisors would meet him. Radar jammers. We already know that Air Force One can defeat enemy aircrafts and missiles, but they don't want to risk actually having to do that. So that's why it's crucial that the president's plane does not show up on enemy radars. To prevent this, Air Force One has many electronic countermeasures. This can jam or confuse enemies' radars. There are pulse emitters on the front of the aircraft. This can confuse an enemy radar by sending back a radar pulse. This will either mirror the return frequency or block it outright. This means anyone trying to track Air Force One won't know its distance, size, or elevation. Modern radars operate on many frequencies, and that's why Air Force One can also jam multiple frequencies at once. But the more widely spread the jamming is, the less effective it is. Alternatively, the plane can simply jam one frequency, but this leaves it vulnerable to other frequencies. Refueling. Air Force One can fly 1/3 of the way around the planet. This means the president can get from the United States to Japan in one trip. But what if Air Force One needs to be refueled? Well, it won't stop at an airport to do this. That's because it would be way too complex and expensive. That's why instead a mid-air refueling jet would simply refuel the plane while it's in the air. This means Air Force One can stay in the air indefinitely. This is again useful in case of a nuclear fallout. The president would not need to land and would be safe from any nuclear radiation. Military operation. Did you know that every Air Force One flight is a military operation in and of itself? The plane is normally stationed at Andrews Air Force Base, but to get there from the White House, the president needs to travel in Marine One. This is the helicopter version of Air Force One. Then Air Force One is readied by military staff. As this is happening, a military convoy sets off. This goes to anywhere Air Force One is about to go, but in advance. It requires extreme teamwork, logistics, and cooperation. Also, when Air Force One enters a foreign airspace, it becomes a military operation for that country too. Air Force One is never far from friendly forces. They will often call ahead to their allied nations. For example, if Air Force One was flying over Europe, it may be escorted by RAF planes. Air Force One is even protected when flying over water. That's because there are many ballistic missile subs stationed under the water. These would be able to launch nuclear missiles against anyone trying to attack Air Force One. Food. Did you know that the refrigerators on Air Force One cost $12 million? That's because they're massive and very reliable. If there was an emergency, Air Force One would need to operate for weeks at a time. On board, there are 3,000 meals. There's also presidential candy on Air Force One. President Reagan started this tradition with jelly beans. But today Air Force One is stocked with presidential M&Ms. Medical facilities. Did you know that there's an operating theatre inside the aircraft? If the president ever has a health issue, then he's not taken to a normal hospital. Instead, he'd get onto Air Force One and be treated by the doctors on board. There's also a dental office with a dentist on board too. Medical workers can even telelink onto the aircraft. They can then use robotic hands to carry out operations. Price. All of these amazing features come at a great cost. Air Force One itself costs nearly $4 billion, but the operating costs are even more expensive. To operate Air Force One for just 1 hour costs $206,000. And as more features, staff, and high-tech gear is added, this number will increase. It's estimated that the new Air Force One, which may be coming in the next 10 years, will cost over $5 billion. It's said that Boeing will build the new Air Force One. But who knows all of the hidden and secret features we may discover on that one. Even though the taxpayers pay for it, none of this stuff is disclosed. That's because it's secret for security reasons. But when the new Air Force One comes out, I'll be sure to do an updated video. But now it's time to make your voice heard. Comment below which was the most interesting secret of Air Force One. If you want some more amazing videos, check out my second channel. But as always, thank you for watching. There are some more videos on screen right now. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to Top 10s.